when you're getting old like me, it's hard to read things and whatnot. So that's what we're going with. We hope that's not here. All right. So like with the first one here from page 108, we were kind of talking about why the use of Beetle. It mentioned, so far as, at that era, at that time, we would be having, Volkswagen Bugs were becoming more popular, Beetles so far as a vehicle. So I think that's certainly something that taking a look at. Page 108, who ends up getting into the Beetle taxi? This is, or Millie, you can go with either name, but it's the same thing. So Millie is getting into the taxi. So it's basically Millie's taxi in order for her to leave the home because it is going to be ultimately destroyed. One of the things that we kind of mentioned before on the one down below as to how Beetles get mentioned over and over and over again on 121 is the car itself kind of ends up being, mindless in some way, where you have that limited human control. Going back again to the short story of the pedestrian, what made, so again, it's not in here, what made the police car and the pedestrian so unusual for us? Like based on how our society would be working, our own examples. And the pedestrian, what made the car unusual? There was nobody in there, all right? So that's the one that's stopping Leonard and asking him questions and all of those kinds of things. So when we say that, hey, a beetle, it's like a bug, in some ways we kind of think of it as being mindless. Well, this sort of already happens within the pedestrian, that we've seen this concept kind of present itself before. So if the car itself is mindless, what does it kind of say about Millie as the person who's getting into the car? She's fairly mindless as well. So the idea that there is that, mindless lack of humanity that's kind of going to be going on for her. And we already said that she is the one who loves the TV screens so much, and the TV screens have been kind of compared to idiot monsters, that you're getting this reinforcement that would be happening over and over and over again. So there are certainly a lot of references to the cars, being Beetles throughout. When he stops at the gas station, everything is Beetle, 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 Beetle. That's the main car that's kind of getting referenced all the time. Probably being a little critical of like the pop culture icon that's kind of happening with that vehicle. When the Beatles were still popular, really in the 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, if you told mom, dad, or whomever, I'm going to get a Beetle, the parents usually weren't too excited about that because Beetles were notoriously unsafe when it comes as a vehicle. If you were to get into an accident with a Beetle, doesn't mean it was going to explode or whatnot, but the reinforcement wasn't as strong. There was concerns with Beetles because the engine's in the back, so if you got into a fender bender where someone hits you, and parents are always going to the worst possible scenario, that there's going to be more significant damage. Again, not explosion kind of happening, but there's a little bit of a stereotype that would go along with the car that it's not a good, safe car to have. And so the fact that it being so popular at this time within the story, the idea that it's not going to be safe, it's not going to be good, people aren't thinking as much as they should. And the other ideas with car, Beetle, I think we should hit that one pretty well. Where's this needle coming from? 114. Coming from the hound. So 114, we get the mechanical hound. Really in that big paragraph on page 114 is where this starts to happen. It made a last single leap into the air coming down at Montauk, that being the hound. From a good 3 feet over his head, its fired legs reaching the procrane needle, snapping out its single angry tooth. Montauk caught it with a bloom of fire. What do we mean when he says he caught it with a bloom of fire?
So the needle comes out of the teeth.
Yeah.
Alright,
So it kind of be like, attacking your, not that it's going to have a needle coming out of the kneecap. So yeah, it's like getting, like venom. When he caught it with a bloom of fire, what does that mean that Montauk did? Catches it with a bloom of fire. Why would Montauk have fire? He has the flamethrower that he's been using to burn down the house at this point. A single wondrous blossom that curled its petals of yellow and blue and orange about the metal dog, clad it in a new covering as it slammed into Montauk and threw him 10 feet back against the hole of the tree, taking the flame gun with him. He felt it scrabble and seize his leg and stab the needle in for a moment before where the fire snapped the hound up in the air, burst its metal bones at the joint, and blew out its interior in a single flushing of red color like a skyrocket fastened to the street. And then it essentially dies at that point. So you have this needle coming from the dog, from the hound, mechanical hound. We're going to say kind of like bites Montauk before it is destroyed by the flamethrower. What three things does Montauk destroy with his flamethrower?
His house.
House.
TVs.
And we'll count TVs as part of the house. House and all its contents being one. Beatty is killed with it, and now third thing we have here is going to be the mechanical hound. All right, so those are three things that he does take out with the flamethrower, which is pretty significant, especially with the hound and Beatty, in that he's someone who doesn't seem to be ultimately too violent, but you have things that are kind of pushing him kind of towards his max. What is the effect going to be of getting stabbed, bit? You know, you're going to have pain that's kind of going with his leg. To the point of what? You're right. It's not killing him, but he certainly feels the pain going through his leg, which is going to make it hard to move. And movement for him is going to be especially important because I just killed the fire company captain. I've shot the mechanical hound dog at this point. So what is going to be coming for him? Somebody, something more. So now you certainly have intense. What would be another word for intense? It begins with an A. Vocab word that we've had before. Intense, severe, acute physical pain. Versus what? What's now this conflict, this dilemma he has? Physical pain versus. I go with mental. I wouldn't quite go pain yet. Because he's going to have physical pain that's coming from, you know, the hound. Versus mental, intellectual, and also I think you could kind of put physical. Get caught, you don't have it. Bassett raises her hand, then the idea comes. Next time you're on a test, you're having a problem, she'll raise her hand, and the answer will just come out. Hopefully she doesn't have to raise her hand too many times. No, you have this dilemma now that's kind of taking place. Physical pain, because really, especially your leg, if your leg is in severe pain to the point where it is very difficult to walk, what could be very much an instinct that you have at that point, or an initial reaction? Well, I can't go to the hospital because, I mean, word's going to be spreading all over the place. At some point, I'm going to be chased by mechanical hounds. There's helicopters and bombers flying over the sky. There's more than one, yeah. They're all over. There's going to be more. I know the police are going to be after me at some point. I may as well at this point.
Just book it. Just book it.
How? My legs are like.
Like how much adrenaline kicks in. You gotta. Hide. Something.
Give up? You're not gonna give up?
I'm not giving up. No.
Why not?
Because it's hops, but then I don't want to lose my life.
Well, and one thing that he certainly is kind of thinking, because when you say I don't want to lose my life, the things that we tend to think of what's important within our own life, and it's going to vary from person to person. But knowledge, family, friends, some kind of motivation to continue on. Those things have pretty much, keep in mind, have been taken away from him. Wife, gone. Family, that was there, gone. Friends, we don't really know of any. Clarice, maybe, she's gone. The ability of having that intellectual freedom, so far as those books, the idea of him being able to get some books, fairly kind of limited. So there is, at this moment, at least, a little bit within his life, do I give up or do I continue to go on? Katie, you said you won't give up. The good news is neither does he. But for a moment, this is at least something that he's kind of thinking about. Is it worth for me to go on? He does decide that it is, and then he's going to continue to go on. And certainly physical freedom is going to be part of it, that intellectual freedom, and even mental freedom is going to kind of like be that intellectual where we got that ability to still kind of think for ourselves, have our own ideas, have our own thoughts. And so that's really something that's kind of weighing for him. And when I said, when you really get down to it, what's the book about? The book is really not so much about books and censorship and all that, but it's, pursuing personal ideas. And that's something that he's going to try to do to the best of his ability. But that's going to be a long, arduous journey that he's going to have to be taking on. Why is this important? So far as the scent? So yeah, and Hayden, where you kind of go, there's more than one. We know for sure there's more than one because we still have that another chase that's taking place with him where there is concern about that scent. So the mechanical, really we kind of say hounds because we know there's more than one, although it's only one at this point. But the mechanical hound has the ability to track Montauk. So even though the one that was there before has been destroyed, there is still this capability, there's still this fear that one can come after him. So, who's his best ally? So Clarice is dead, but if he were to have a friend, who's his friend? We got Faber. What are two things that Faber gives him that's meant to try to help? One of them is alcohol. And then the other one would be old clothes, Faber's clothes, not Montauk's, because then it's going to have a different smell to it. So old clothes. So the idea with these things is that they are meant to mask the smell of Montauk so that he can try to get away. So is he giving up at this point? No, because there's certainly something that he's still trying to do to at least, preserve himself and give himself a little bit of life. He's already taken out Beatty. What's another thing he does so far as for firefighters? Because remember, from part 2, there's the idea that the salamander is going to devour its tail. Remember, we got our 2 firemen. We have Stoneman in addition to Beatty, and we have Black. And after he ends up leaving for here, he ends up putting books into Black's house. So the hope is that he is going to try to set him up as potentially being a criminal. So at the same point, want to keep in mind that he plants books in Black's house, which was part of that plan that was going on from part number 2. Good job, Keith. Their plan, we said metaphorically, salamander is going to devour its tail. What are other names that they mentioned for the fire truck itself? Are there any other terms that get used for the fire truck? There's a couple that get used, besides saying the fire truck. One of them is on, yeah, 108. Take a look at 108, very first line. Easy one to find. Zach, you with us? 108. Will we get to the top of 108? It's dragon. So Montauk sat on the full fender of the dragon, moving his head half an inch to the left, half an inch to the right, left, right, right, left. Dragon gets mentioned is associated with them. Why dragon? Breathes fire. And then what would be the other animal that gets associated with the fire department, since the salamander is going to devour its own tail? salamander specifically is what they go with. So they'll have a couple references where they mention dragon, they mention salamander. When they're getting capitalized, more often than not, it's that personification that's going to be happening with the vehicle itself. So those would be a couple things to kind of keep in mind. Just thinking for little things that pop up here in the future. Number 6, 20 million Montauk's running for page 131. Ben, you have anything written for this one? No? Tyler, you have anything for this one? Jason, what do you got? No? This is the toughie one. Nothing?
I got nothing either.
For me, it's number 6. For you guys, it's what? Number
14.
14. We have. Okay, so we got the scapegoat idea going on. When you say everyone's watching him, and this would go along with the scapegoat, everyone's watching him on TV. Okay, so once it is known that he is a fugitive, so Montauk is a fugitive, all of a sudden, what is going to be the primary focus on the screens on the news at this point? Everything is going to be about the chase of Montauk. So we have 20 million Montauk's running, which we'll get into how we have the symbolism part coming here in a moment. But from a setting standpoint, all viewers are now watching, quote unquote, the chase. Which is going to be Montauk and the Hound. So what you start to have happening here on 131. With an effort, Montauk reminded himself again that this was no fictional episode to be watched on his run to the river. It was in actuality his own chess game he was witnessing move by move. He shouted to give himself the necessary push away from this last house window and the fascinating seance going on in there. Hell, and he was away and gone. The alley, a street, and smell the river. Leg out, leg down, leg out, leg down. 20 million Montauk's running. Soon, if the cameras caught him, 20 million Montauk's running like an ancient flickery Keystone comedy, cops, robbers, chasers, and all that kind of stuff. Why would there be 20 million Montauk's?
20 million TVs.
Because there's 20 million screens or so that would be going on. So you have a Montauk for every single scene, for every single screen that would be going on. So there's 20 million, make sure I get my zeros right, screens. So there's going to be 20 million chases. Since you have so many screens going on, this is when, Josh, you said about like the scapegoat idea needing to have, since you have so many people watching it, because keep in mind, this is before we're talking DirecTV, Netflix, and whatnot. If you have your screen on, you are watching this, we need to have some kind of finality. We need to have some type of ending come to place with this one. So by having that chase going on, it's not really this one little episode of it that is happening, but there's 20 million of them going on and on and on and on and on. From a symbolism aspect, now that we kind of have the literal idea that's going on, what could kind of be some symbolism that's going to be taking place with it as to an idea that it's reinforcing that you got 20 million of this stuff going on and on and on and on. When the TV goes, everyone stand up, go outside, look to the left, go to the right, because you have this voice that's going to be going over the newscast. What are those 20 million people going to do? They're going to get up, they're going to go outside, they're going to go to the left, they're going to go to the right. So you basically have 20 million people who are under what? Some kind of mind control, some kind of basically like puppeteer kind of master thing that would be going on. But you have these people who, again, and not to overuse the term mindless that we've had, but there is control of the population from a single entity that's going to be taking place. And if the TV tells you to do something, then that is what you're going to do. So that has kind of become the all-encompassing, the all-knowing kind of voice in the box that's going to control every single aspect that's going to happen. Good news is, he makes it to the river, and then, that's really kind of ugly fire, but he sees some fire. What's this fire doing? True. Mormon people. You have people standing around the fire. You got the old guys, which we talked about, the ordinary, tired kind of faces. So this fire that is kind of strange, kind of different, what makes it unusual? It's unusual because it is warming. If it's warming, that means it's going to be useful. If it's warming, it's going to be helpful. If it's warming, why do you want to stand by a fire when you're cold? Besides to say, to get you warm. Why do you need fire when it's cold? So you can be warm, so you don't die. So you can survive. So it's something that is useful. It's something that is helpful. It is something that is sustaining. You had a question with your study guide where it was kind of talking about the sun and all that kind of stuff, and what makes the sun a little bit unusual. I mean, the sun, really, when you think about it, what is it up in the sky? It's one giant fireball. And that is something that is giving food. That is something that is helping sustain the planet and whatnot, that makes it a habitable place. So the idea here that you have fire that actually can be useful, can be helpful, can be sustaining, it is not always harmful as it has been used with Fahrenheit 451. So the symbolism of it certainly is there is a sense of duality that goes along with fire. Fire in itself isn't going to be bad, but it's all as to how that fire is going to be used. There's the duality. What is the purpose of it? What is the intent of it as to how it's going to be used? Beatty's using it for evil intent. Fire department's using it for bad intent, to get rid of books. But here, there's a place when you get outside the city that you find something that's a little bit different about it and makes it a little bit more useful. Since I mentioned Beatty, not something on here. What does Montauk realize about Beatty after he has killed him? And he has the realization, it's written in italics, that he decides that he had wanted to die, that Beatty wants to die. Why would Beatty want to die if he's been the antagonist the whole entire time? Why want to die in that kind of society that he's living in? He certainly seems to know his books. So he'll talk about dreams that he has, where he's saying all this stuff about books, and he's quoting people in all these discussions. So he certainly seems to be a well-read individual. Is it that he's a book lover that has turned evil, and now he's the destroyer of all books, and there's a sense of guilt that he feels? Could it be that he's a person who loves books and realizes that his time is going to be coming sooner or later, kind of like what's happening with Montauk? But there seems to be a little bit more complexity to him than simply he's just the bad guy. That he has a lot of this wealth of information, of knowledge right at his fingertips, but he's the one who's in charge of eliminating it, and there does seem to be some conflict that is going on with it. So what makes Montauk, if you go with that, he wants to die because he likes the books and he realizes he won't ever be able to use them. That makes Montauk a little bit more of a heroic character because he takes that risk of leaving as opposed to simply succumbing to, hey, I'm going to give up. You said you wouldn't give up after, Beatty, the injection of the needle.
Yeah,
you could argue in some ways that Beatty is deciding that I'm going to give up because it's not worth me trying to go through and be the one who's going to kind of lead this charge. That Montauk ends up being the person who does that. we're book burners too with 145, and really when it kind of comes to the plan, what is the hope of Granger and Company? What's the change that they're going to try to do? What have they done, number one? Because Montauk now has a responsibility. He's no longer going to be Montauk to them, or Guy, but he is now the living, breathing. Yeah, it's Ecclesiastes in the Bible. So he is now like essentially the living, breathing Bible. So all of them have burned books as well, but what they have done is they have already burned books. But they memorized them. So if Guy is the quote-unquote living and breathing Bible, I'm thinking vocab word again. What is he? Almost. Begins with an I. Yeah, he's like the incarnation, or the Bible incarnate. Incarnation or incarnate is you are like the life form of something that is abstract. Tyler, if anyone ever says you are evil incarnate, you get mad at them because they're insulting you. If you go, Mr. Kane, you are generosity, goodness incarnate, you're trying to get bonus points. Close, within reason. So he essentially at this point is, the Bible incarnated. It can take on a verb form, it can take on a noun form, it can take on an adjective form. So he's essentially the incarnation of the Bible. What's the plan? We're going to come back and we are going to, bring knowledge back to the world. Bring books back to the world. What makes this plan more feasible? Oh, look, you're feeling better already. City's gone. We got a redo. We're the people that are going to take charge. We're going to come in. We can kind of do this all over again. And certainly, we already talked about the mirror factory idea. That we're not going to be looking at screens. We're not going to be looking through screens.
We're going outside now.
Looking at or through screens is not what we're going to be doing. But if I'm taking a look at a mirror, I'm actually going to look at my real self as opposed to, some kind of depiction that would be taking place. And by Montauk walking in the front, symbolically, what does that mean? If he's the very first one who's going to be leading the charge, he is going to be, maybe not necessarily God, but he's going to be the one who's going to be at the forefront of this. And keep in mind, of the people who are there, he is probably one of the younger ones. So he is the one who is going to be responsible for the future and the change. So in some ways, it goes hopefully from a dystopic book to one that could maybe end up kind of being a utopia at the very end. And the nice thing with the meaning of the title so far is symbolism with burning bright. You got a few things here that certainly could be burning bright. First off in the chapter, what's the first thing that really burns bright? Screens, the house. So there's something where there's kind of some destruction that's taking place. Or, responsible for the future and the change. What is burning bright literally at the end of the book? The city. It has been destroyed. And we talked about the phoenix. But what also hopefully could now be burning bright, where we had fire, where it was warmth, where it was something sustaining, the future could be burning bright so far as it could be a light that is going to shine and make the world the better. So you could have some kind of more of a beneficial light fire that is going to bring about change for the better, as opposed to one that is going to be destruction overall. A lot of these passages that we're kind of referencing, we're going to be taking a look at tomorrow. You're going to be taking a look at tomorrow while we're doing those questions. Again, it's one that you're going to be able to, small groups, you can do pairs, you can do up to people of 3. It's 19 questions total, so you're going to take your time with it. What you're also going to get tomorrow is I am going to give you the exam review guide that we're going to do as well. That's going to be a homework that we're doing for Tuesday. But you want to make sure you have books with you for tomorrow, and then also Monday, Tuesday of next week, as we're going over those things. So you can get your review.
Train stopper.
I officially lost.